In this podcast episode, we wrap up the year with Stacey McCray's wonderfully informative personal story of starting over in her 50s. To give you a brief idea, Stacey left her successful career, her long-term marriage ended unexpectedly, and she vacated the home she lived in for 22 years. While that provided the freedom to start a new chapter, it also took a toll on Stacey's mental health. Stacey's journey relates to the transitional turning points that we've discussed so often throughout this podcast and reminds us that life is full of unexpected changes. How we respond to them can impact our well-being in many ways. Stacey is choosing to forge a path to personal growth through her challenges and becoming everything that she can be in this second stage of life. Now approaching 60, today Stacey is passionate about using her newly acquired skills, helping others through trauma and mental health issues and loneliness.
Hello, I'm Kate Shaw, your other host, and together we're helping men and women embrace the second stage of life with less fear. So, join us today as Stacey shares her inspiring journey of starting again in her 50s and how she is helping others do the same. You'll hear insights, inspiration, and valuable takeaways that will help you create a fulfilling and purposeful life. Learn from Stacey's experience and discover how you can embrace change and navigate transitional turning points to find your true self.
And I'm the other host, Ros McMaster. I've been saying it for 30 weeks and today I forgot to say it, but I'm sure everybody knows who I am by now. Stacey, hello and welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I love this story because, it's, after 30 weeks, this is just a really nice rounding off because your story encompasses everything that we've been talking about, creating connection to community and combating loneliness and mindset and how we handle transitional points and the fact that, when you're in your 50s, that is often a point where a lot of losses and changes experienced as we move into the second stage. So I'm really excited about this episode.
Yeah, me too. And we'll have the tools as well for a change.
Yeah.
So Stacey, perhaps we can begin by looking at the post-divorce period. You had 3 of the top 5 stresses all at once. Divorce, moving house, loss of job. How on earth did you cope?
Oh, well, like everything I do, I just threw myself into it and really focused on setting up my new consultancy, setting up my new apartment, pretty well avoiding all the emotion and stresses. But yeah, it really was a time where I suddenly, as I got those things organized, I went, who am I now that I don't have all those things? What's my identity? Who am I going forward?
Very confronting. So were there fears that you had regarding moving into this change, specifically because now you were an older woman?
Well, absolutely. I was very fearful of the future because it was just so unknown as to what would happen to me. And in my 50s, I knew that I was a bit older in my career, so that was going to be challenging. And yeah, just kind of starting again and not knowing what was going to happen. But then over time, as I started to work on myself and see new opportunities present, I came quite excited about the future because I now had the ability to create the life that I wanted.
A whole new you, yeah.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to all those fears at starting again. I was married for 30 years and I wasn't even used to paying bills. My husband used to take care of everything. And even though I was a businesswoman and independent, or thought of myself as being independent and strong, I went to buy a new car and I went to pieces. I thought, how do I do this?
Oh, that'd be me.
Yeah, I was taking baby steps.
That wasn't the situation for me because having worked as a financial planner, I was across all the finances. So that side wasn't really an issue. It was more about the mindset side and the emotional side of, I guess it's like the stages of grief because you're grieving not for what happened, but for what it should have been.
Yes.
You've worked all these years and you're just getting to that point where you're going to start moving into a more flexible lifestyle together. you've got your house, your beach house, you've got everything going on, and life looks perfect on the outside, but there were challenges on the inside. So
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, and I can totally relate to that. You're grieving the loss of the
What could have
future that
been.
you
yeah, what it should have
imagined
been.
that you were
Yeah.
Yeah.
going to have. Yeah.
So, can you tell us more how these changes impacted on your sense of identity?
Yeah, well, I guess when you're in business, a lot of most men and many women, their identity is tied to their work, to their job title, and to all the things that provides.
Yes.
And then I wasn't any of those things. And one of the things that I worried about was, will people still, want to connect and be with me because I didn't have all those things to offer anymore?
Yeah, and I imagine being a plus one too sometimes is a bit awkward, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
thought
Yeah,
about that. Well, how
yeah.
did you
Look, I
balance that? Like building the
well,
business and your protracted divorce, how did you balance it all?
Well, it was really challenging. So I threw myself into my new consultancy, and I had a little bit of challenges, mental health wise, but I was completely in denial. That's not me. I'm amazing. I'm a high level businesswoman. I have all these skills. I don't have mental health issues, until finally it just took its toll. And I just, my GP and my psychologist finally said, look, stop working, stop pushing yourself, and focus on, sitting in, the situation and moving forward with the divorce and getting everything done. So it was a real wake up call. And I think for most of us, we don't really think about our mental health like we do our physical health. But obviously now through COVID and, all those other challenges people have been through, it's more acceptable to say, hey, I'm struggling, I'm not quite okay, but I'm going to now take time and work on it.
Yeah. Can I ask how the mental health issues manifested themselves? Like what was going on? Just
Yeah, so I
sleeplessness, anxiety?
so I was putting myself into work, but I suddenly couldn't concentrate, had the brain fog. I would have, meetings with people, and then I'd come back and I, just struggle to do any follow-ups, to write, the struggling getting out of bed. So just, you wake up in the morning, and unless I specifically had something to do, you just loll around, and then I'd stay up late just sleeping, and fall asleep on the couch because you're a bit sort of scared to go to bed. So when I realized that, what I needed to do was think about how to put in a routine. So when you're not in a regular lifestyle like I was, and you've got a lot more flexibility with your time, it can just sort of while away. So I was catching up with some business girlfriends who are all talking about their high-powered goals. And I thought, what I really need to do is put in place some healthy habits and routines. So I set about drafting a document of, what's my morning routine, get up, get to the gym, have a healthy breakfast, meditate, sit down with my to-do list already prepared. In the evening, to make sure you start turning the lights down, you go to bed at a reasonable time, stop looking at your phone, still very hard to do, and maybe read, meditate, do some stretches, whatever that is. But then also learning about your own body rhythms and where you have your energy during the day. And for many people, that's energy you have in the morning. So then I'd say, okay, the tasks I've got to do today that need a little bit of brain power, I'll do in the morning. And things less so, maybe it's medical appointments or, having a coffee meeting or something, I'd do in the afternoon.
So that's when you say taking notice of those periods of the day where you have more energy, that was a conscious decision to start taking notice of that. Is that a tool that you were given in one of the courses you did? Because
Yeah, so
as
I've
part of
done
your
heaps of
self-care,
courses.
yeah,
Yeah.
as part of your self-care, you did a whole lot of courses, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Well, I intuitively knew that, but certainly I didn't know there were books out there on habits. So I, went into all of those and biorhythms, and, as, just pre-COVID, as, life was getting challenging, I started reading up a lot on self-care, as you say, and I ended up doing a bunch of courses, because during COVID, what else are we to do? We're at home. So I, Nature Care, who I'd done some aromatherapy with way back, they had all these different courses in well-being, and then a new one in positive mental health and all these things. And it was great because, it wasn't a lot of work, a little bit of pre-reading, and then you'd be on a Zoom call with a whole lot of amazing people and everyone's sharing their kind of journeys as well. And then just, little short assignments or multiple choice or whatever. But the first time I had to do a multiple choice exam, I got really, really anxious because, how am I going to go? So it was quite interesting to go from a period where life was full on, long working hours, complex work, managing staff, clients. And then I was doing a lot of business networking and social media and lots of events and lots of things, plus running a household. And now worrying about doing a multiple choice, like what's happening to me, and so that's part of the whole brain fog, procrastination, not sure what am I meant to be doing now? How do I get myself out of this slump? So yeah, it was good to start learning some tools to deal with that.
That's really a lot of courage there too. You didn't just give up and fall in a hole. You just decided to climb out.
Well, I did get in the hole because of this whole denial that it was all this stuff was having that impact on my mental health, and having a panic attack and those sort of things, and not knowing what to do. Whereas now, with the ability to go, okay, stop, what do I need to do? I need to breathe, I need to meditate, I need to go outside and have a walk with my dog on the beach, maybe get fish and chips, so do those things. So I actually also met someone who ran a self-care school, and she has a document called an emergency self-care plan. So you can write in, when certain things happen, which people should I call? What activities should I do? So now when I'm going into something that I think will make me anxious or stressed, I sort of clear the decks beforehand. So, I've got clarity, I'm well rested, because sleep's so important. But then I'd, after the stressful event, be like a deer in the headlights. Well, what do I do now? So then I realized I have to actually prepare what I'm going to do after the stressful event, to say, right, I have scheduled to see a friend later, or to go and have a massage, or right, the dog's ready with his lead on, we're going to go straight for a walk. Sometimes it's better than avoiding, is just to sit in it. So one of my meditation coaches said, because I had this avoidant, don't want to think about the issue. And so I just learnt tapping. So I sat down after a stressful event, did some tapping, did some meditation, and fell asleep. And, that was really good to have those tools to tap into when I need it. Because I remember back in my desk, I had some rescue remedy, and I never even opened it. Because generally when you're stressed, you can't think, what do I need to do to deal with this stress?
Because you're too busy.
Yeah, and you've gone into fight, flight, and, all that panic in your body. And when you're really stressed, things you don't need, like, back when you needed, your parasympathetic nervous system to, turn on and, run away from the saber-toothed tiger. Well, life's not like that now, but our body still reacts like that and shuts down everything you don't need to, deal with the situation. So it shuts down digestion, reproduction, a whole lot of things. So the digestive thing then leads to a whole lot of gut issues and health, and just so many things. I wish I knew all this earlier in my career.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I read on the weekend actually about that nerve you're just talking about. Jumping in the ice cold pool helps it, which I can't do. That apparently stimulates it, along with foods and things like that.
I did do a fire and ice up here in Noosa, where you get in the cold water. So I've done breathing courses and part of the meditation, and we learned how to do that Wim Hof breathing and a few different types of breathing. And when I was about to get into the ice bath, they said, which type of breathing? And I'm like, okay, yep, all prepared, get in. And you still go, oh.
Yes.
Did you find it good?
For a few minutes. I managed to stay in for a few minutes, but I cheated and left my toes out. And then we jumped in a sauna. So yeah, I'm not going to go doing that again anytime soon, but that coldness. So I actually generally turn the shower down at the end.
Okay,
good tip. For that cold.
I could do
yes,
that.
I like that in the shower, but I've tried that cold and hot thing as well, but you left your toes out. My toes were the only things that got in.
That'd
the
be
rest of
me.
me was
Yeah, my
out.
husband has it all year round in our pool.
Oh my
He swims,
gosh.
after work
Wow.
in the pool.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy.
But Stacey, like meditation's been a very big part. Well, it's all been a big part by the sounds of it. But a big part of your self-care journey has been the meditation. So, how did you first get introduced to meditation, and what was your experience like?
Well,
And
I'd
which
heard
one?
about it years before, but like most people said, I'm too busy, and my mind's too cluttered. I can't think of nothing. But I was soon given a voucher to centered meditation. And, walking into this studio in the city, you just felt calm straight away. And we learned this style, which is effortless meditation. And so it's not about thinking of nothing. It's just recognizing that thoughts are coming and going and, going with that. So then I went on their retreats as well. And part of it is the adult learning. So we absorb a lot of the information as a child and become a product of our environment, the things that happened to us or the things we didn't get. And that really plays out in a lot of our behaviors today. And we don't realize, this stuff's stored in our bodies. And if we look back at a situation that happened to us, we don't know what was going on when we were a child. We're looking at now with a different lens. So a lot of our behaviors, you get into patterns. And so how do you get off those patterns, off those treadmills of, success is so important, or, whatever it is. For me, I've always done a lot of personal and professional development because I never got my degree. I didn't finish, I didn't pass English, clearly. So I recognize that I've always had a chip on my shoulder about not having that degree. And I've always pushed myself in my career and got on to the next thing and just love
Oh,
of
trying to
learning
prove
about all the
yourself.
information. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I then did the teacher training, which was great, learning both the effortless self-directed that you do yourself in silence and also writing guided meditations, which I've since done, for actually the Kathy in the self-care school asked me to do some meditations. And then because, as I say, a lot of this trauma or different things are stored in your body, when you meditate, some of that stuff comes up, and you go, what's going on there? Or you recognize different issues. So then they ran a course in inner growth coaching to actually help people through those. And as part of the year-long course, I then coached people. And I was amazed not only about the life situations that people in the course had been through, but what all our volunteers had been through. And I actually found that quite stressful. One of the things is you need to get over your own trauma to be able to help others. And what I was finding with these very traumatic things these people have been through, it wasn't their situation. It was when they'd say, oh, they couldn't get out of bed, or they did things, or they struggled to think or whatever. I went, oh my God, that's my situation. And that was actually quite tough for me to do. So I'm not really doing anything with it yet, apart from frientoring.
Yeah.
And yeah, because you really have to have really stepped out of things yourself. One of the things is about forgiveness, to forgive the person that impacted on your life, whether that's a parent or a boss, or, for many of us, it's our ex-spouse. And I really didn't like that word forgiveness. Didn't make sense to me, because how can I forgive them? Forgiveness is actually about forgiving within yourself. And so they changed the language to emotional completion.
Yes.
So for many of us, we have physically separated and that's all gone. But if you're still, when you think about it or have to deal with an issue, you get triggered and upset, you haven't completed emotionally. So there were some really good tools to kind of work through that, which I think is so important. And what I find is a lot of women do go through this journey of, grief, reflection, self-discovery, and sort of come out the other end as who they want to be. And then you start attracting those people in your life. But I find a lot of men don't really do the work. They don't unpack their stuff.
Why do you think
they
that
take their
is?
suitcase to the next place? Well, I think that men, they've been taught to be kind of stoic and, soldier on, have a spoon of concrete, and they don't actually have the same emotional vocabulary that we do. So often they have trouble expressing their feelings. And so, they often repartner quite quickly for whatever reason. They don't want to be on their own, or they're used to that lifestyle, where women are more comfortable. I guess certainly I found being on my own, I've learned a lot, to do things around the house or whatever.
I noticed a lot of women jump very quickly into it as well without doing the work, or they become very bitter about men. But, there's always two sides in the relationship. But men, it's funny, like you would know from the dating apps.
Yeah.
I notice so many men will put on there, no baggage, please. And I think, I bet you've got a fair bit of your own that you haven't unpacked.
Well, you just hope it's a carry-on. It's not like a container sitting at Heathrow, and they've decluttered and, popped it away. But everyone's got life experiences. And I think it's about who you are now and who you're becoming. And that's what I like to find out when I meet someone new. What are their interests? What are their plans? And then if I like them, yes, start learning about the background. But the last thing you want is on a first coffee date to hear about all their drama and how horrible their ex was. They're all crazy. All these women might have married 3 or 4 of them, all crazy.
You can relate to that.
Crazy. So
yeah. If just before we move on, because I can't wait to get to asking you about decluttering. That's a favorite subject of mine. Just with the meditation, I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't have time to meditate, but you don't need to set a lot of time aside. How many times a week would you meditate, and for how long?
Yeah, look, I mean, ideally with the process we've learned, it's 20 or 30 minutes a couple of times a day. But
a couple of times a day.
That's like TM. I did that course. They were the same. Yeah.
But there are lots of great apps now. So Calm app is every morning there's a 10-minute and there's a nice little message. So that is a great way to start your day. And then there are apps that will help you go to sleep. If you don't want something too stimulating, but Yoga Nidra, where you can sort of drift off to sleep is great. But I think even knowing the breathing exercises, to just stop, take a breath and reflect. I used to find I was running from thing to thing. You'd run late in your meeting, and then you'd fall out of the cab to the next one and tell them how late you were. And, and you just were I was so unfocused, and you weren't getting that productivity or the really good outcomes. And so meditation also helps you think more clearly. So it's like, when you can't afford house insurance, but you can't afford your house to burn down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're really busy and you can't meditate. But if you meditate, you'll actually be calmer and more productive and less scattered in your mind. And it also becomes clearer as to what's important and what's not.
Yeah, definitely.
So you become more focused, and part of, trying to be productive and achieve your goals is to get away from the busyness. There's a lot of things we spend our time on that we don't really need to, or aren't that important.
When you talk about the breathing, I know I'll move on, but I do notice a lot of us are shallow breathers. We don't really take the deep breath, which makes such a different emotion.
Oh, yeah. And
relaxing.
that's why people are tired a lot of the times too. They're not breathing deeply enough.
No, I was one of those.
Yeah. Exhausting. But
and to slow down your breathing, because often we breathe really fast, and you live longer if you breathe slower.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay.
Well, all that oxygen, all that lovely, healthy oxygen getting into your lungs.
More slowly.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like, I know if I go for a swim after 4 o'clock, I always have a really good sleep, because you're taking all those deep breaths when you're swimming. It's
I'm always
really,
in a hurry.
really good.
I've got to do that.
Yeah. But it's just, I think a key takeaway from, everything that you've talked about, like, you went and did courses, and you're not just doing the course and you're not just reading the books, you're putting it into practice. And as everybody says, change only happens if you change.
Yeah, otherwise nothing's
going to happen. Something different.
Otherwise nothing's going to happen.
Nothing changes, nothing happens. Yeah. But, I found that.
Yeah, but let's get on to decluttering.
I've got to do that because I want to move soon. So with the decluttering and creating new spaces, it's also, you say, considered like a form of self-care. So
yes, for sure.
Why is having a harmonious and uncluttered environment important to you? And how do you go about creating that environment? Well, I don't know where to start.
Well, I remember many years ago seeing Peter Walsh, who was Oprah's declutterer. And he talked about, thinking about your space and what do you want to be doing in it. And so for many people, their dining table is cluttered with stuff. And so they can't sit down as a family to, have a meal together. So it's about thinking of the purpose of a room and having things that are, used to say useful and beautiful. Now he talks about form and function. So having a space for everything. So I'm regularly, you look at a drawer, there's all this stuff, get some dividers, sort it out. And if you don't need 15 spatulas, maybe you need 3. So getting rid of things is quite cathartic. When I left home back in my 20s, you know what it's like. You take the, spare linen, the beanbag, whatever. And then when I left my long-term relationship, I took the spare bed, my desk, my personal stuff, bit of kitchen stuff. So I got brand new furniture that suited my CBD lifestyle. And then moving up here to the beaches, I sold some of that furniture. And again, bought things that suit this lifestyle. And so you need to create space for new things in your life. So letting go of stuff that doesn't serve you, whether it's your possessions, your clothes particularly, because clothes are your kind of persona, When I decided to leave Sydney and come to Noosa, I actually donated all my corporate wardrobe to Dress for Success.
Bless you. Yeah, I've done that.
And it was like this much beautiful Anthea Crawford and other fabulous clothing. And surprisingly, when I donated it and I walked away, I shed a tear. These are a whole lot of memories of corporate business trips and activities and different things. And it was
identity
really,
again.
Yeah. Cutting that chapter. And then I think one of the problems is, when you become single, you kind of maybe go a bit too far into your dress, and then it kind of swings back, and you find your own identity. So it's all about like the life. But for me, decluttering is all about the lifestyle you want to create, and it's about who you are now and who you're becoming. And yes, it's good to have mementos. I have a number of things from my mum, of course, and other things over the years, but you don't need to keep everything.
Yeah, and it's about, not staying attached to the past and the identity you had in the past. And, when you were saying it's really cathartic, like, I'm always saying to people, let me know when you're going to have a clean up. I'll come and help you because I love it.
I should get you to come and help me.
But I went and helped a friend. She had separated from her husband, and she still had all her boxes of gear in the garage 3 years later. And so I said, come on, I'll help you unpack and we'll get rid of stuff you don't need. Clearly you don't need it if it's been in the garage in a box for 3 years. But by the end of the day, like, I was so ruthless, by the end of the day she had a panic attack. So it wasn't very cathartic for her. She just did not want to let go. So
I'll be like that. I've got cards and things from people that have passed away that I loved, all these people, and you just want to hang on to them, but it's becoming quite a few now.
That's nostalgia, but otherwise it's just stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got a lot. I've got too much stuff. I don't
need
it.
Think
yeah, you're right.
For me now, what I've recognized, it's not about accumulating stuff. It's about relationships and experiences. I've met some amazing people up here from all walks of life. I've tried lots and lots of new things. So your possessions, if you have too many possessions, they can really start controlling you and take a lot of time. So you don't have the opportunity for those things. So there's a podcast called The Minimalist, and I think it's use things, not people.
Yes.
That's nice.
Not the other way around.
Yeah.
But it's, with decluttering, and since you're talking about friends, I mean, decluttering can mean you would have left a lot of friends behind as well with your new life, not just because you moved from Melbourne to Queensland.
Melbourne to Sydney and then Queensland,
Yeah, but your corporate friends too, you have a different group of friends now as well.
Yeah, so as I started doing my well-being type studies and doing a lot more healthy activities, obviously after I left my marriage, very single, out and about, partying all the time. But as I started going through the well-being journey, that wasn't so much the case. And I read a book on well, it was something about getting rid of toxic friends, but it was really about the nature of friendship. And if someone's doing something that you're not comfortable with, actually calling it rather than drifting away. And so what I did is, rather than go and get rid of toxic friends, I had an affirmation that was attracting like-minded people into my life.
It's like you.
Yeah.
And so what I found, with my wellbeing coach here in Noosa, it's about your vibration. So getting to know yourself and your blueprint and what your energy field is and what you're putting out. And that suits some people and it doesn't others. And so when I go back and see some of my Sydney friends, male and female, they're still stressed, but somehow my new calmness rubs off on them, which is so
nice.
incredible.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really nice. Yeah. But I like that whole idea too. Like people say, yeah, get rid of your toxic friends, but that's kind of a negative way to do it. And it's
Absolutely
suggesting
no.
it's suggesting there's a victim there somewhere. So yeah, instead of the negative of, I don't want this negative in my life, it's about what you do want,
What you want
not
to
what you
attract.
don't want. Yeah. Yeah.
And look, I read
because
friendships turn over. Yeah.
yeah, and because the toxic friend, I mean, they might be toxic or they might not be, but your friend might be a nice person and you're a nice person, but you just don't suit each other anymore.
Well, there's that saying, you have friends for a season, a reason, or forever. I love that saying.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's about having common interests. And I read recently that your friends turn over, about 50% turns over about every 7 years. You get new friends who you have common interests, and some will drop off. But one thing that really resonated through one of my psychologists is, when you spend time with your friend, if you come away feeling better about yourself, then that's a real good friend. But if you come away feeling really negative about yourself, there's something kind of not right. And there are a lot of people out there who are quite negative. And if you meet someone, and I was listening to something about narcissists, and if you're dating or anywhere and you meet someone and over an hour they talk about 4 negative things, well, that's like a red flag. So you want to surround yourself with positive people and have that lovely energy. That's not to say that you don't support each other when you're going through challenges. But if you get too ingrained in someone else's stuff when you've got your own stuff going on, it can be very draining.
Yeah.
Right.
So we spoke earlier and you raised the subject of a life coach. Life coaching has been around since the 80s, I think, and I can't believe people are still sort of heading in that direction. But a soul coach, is that the same as a life coach? You used the word soul coach.
When I was going through this identity crisis, I was at an event, and again, attracting, people around me. And this lady said she was a soul coach, which really resonated because, with my lack of identity. And so one of the most amazing things was, and it's a common tool in life coaching, is the wheel of life. So it covers things like, your career, relationships, fun, hobbies, spiritual, financial. And so you rank out of 10 each of those. And most of us have pretty wonky wheels when it comes to the wheel of life. So I decided to kind of focus on relationships and fun. And so then we did this sort of mind map of, well, because I didn't have any hobbies, like I'd been a workaholic and, business networker. And so I thought, well, I like to watch comedy. I like to dance, I like to be by the beach, I'd like to travel. And suddenly all those things started just manifesting. And, people are really surprised when I say, oh, I did burlesque dancing and stand-up comedy. And they go, wow, you're so brave. But it's really was so fun. Again, you build a tribe or a community with those people who are different to what you've been, hanging out with in the corporate world. And if you can take on some like amazing challenge like that, then you can do anything.
It's
you
empowering, isn't it?
Fear. Very empowering.
It's like me doing the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, it's about you being willing to take a risk and take a chance on yourself. And you didn't know if you would like something, you just gave it a go. And as it turned out, I remember I actually met you at one of your meetup groups, and you were talking about the fact that you went and tried this stand-up comedy, and hey, what do you know, I'm actually good at it. So
Who knew?
Well, look,
I know someone else like that.
I'd done speaking and writing, so it was really a different style. So I had to slow down, the pace. Every word had to have a meaning. You're learning all the pauses and interacting with audiences. So because I love people, that actually gave me a boost. My biggest issue, though, was even though I'd written my set and all my jokes and, there's formulas for doing that, was remembering it. So with the brain fog, it's like, oh my God. And so I'd write it out and then I'd rehearse it, listen to myself, and invariably I'd always forget one or two jokes, but the audience don't know. But yeah, so again, that was a really challenging thing to do, because on the one hand, I like doing it, but on the other hand, my brain's like, are you sure you can do this?
I have to congratulate you though, because I've been an entertainer since I was very young. I've no trouble. I can sing in front of anybody because I'm practicing and it's rehearsed, it's controlled. The same with acting. But being a comedian is the bravest thing of all, because you're just getting out there and every audience is different and you've got to ad-lib a lot and all that kind of thing. So I think comedians are amazing.
Oh,
well,
so brave.
Yeah.
Firstly, Seinfeld said that most people would rather be in the coffin than doing the eulogy.
Yeah.
And then you've got to write original material and get strangers to laugh.
I know.
So it's not like we know each other and you've got a bit of contents, and as you say, every audience is different and you don't know if the joke's going to land until you try it out. But
yes. Well, when we get leads us after talking to that about connection and connection to community, finding purpose, combating loneliness, you've come up with a multitude of ways to not just getting involved in community projects, but you've also been pivotal in initiating groups that bring people together. How did you find your calling to build community and have an impact where you see the gaps? And can you please tell us about those?
I remember back when, I moved into financial planning, had to find our own clients, and someone suggested a women's business network. So I'd been involved with lots of business networks, chambers of commerce, setting up women in finance in New South Wales, and ultimately creating my own expat advisors community. And so I already had those skills. So when I had to recreate my life and started building friendships, particularly when I came up here to Noosa and didn't know anyone, I went straight to meetup groups. So Meetup was created just after September 11, when a couple of guys ran into each other in their building lift and realized, they weren't talking to each other. And they created this platform where people could connect over common interests. So now it is global, and up here it's very active in Noosa. So I went to about half a dozen and, became actively involved with, the healthy groups, doing walking and activities, and some other older groups and different things. And then I was helping organize things, and I found there was a gap for what I really wanted to do, which is go to live music, go to comedy, attend all the festivals and different things. So I set up what I called Noosa Social Connections. And, that came from in my business networking. When I set up my consultancy company, we called it, a girlfriend helped me call it Strategic Connector. And then when I was living in the CBD, Lend-Lease asked me to help build community there. And so I called that Barangaroo Social. So it made sense for me when I moved up here, when I was trying to figure a name, to call it Noosa Social Connections. And social connections, as it turns out, is a real buzzword now that everyone's using, because social connections are so important for mental health. Yeah, I mean, loneliness was already an epidemic back then 20 years ago, and now it's even worse.
Yes.
And as I said before, in terms of friendships, as you get older, there'll be some that drop off, but some come back on. But often for men, they don't get the new ones back on. Their friendships are their long-term, friendships. And so by coming together in groups with common activities, it gets people out of the house. They start to build connection, and some people have said joining Meetup has changed their lives,
Yeah. So it's how rewarding.
I mean, when I've seen people in the groups connect with each other, it's like, oh, that's amazing, job done,
Yes, and you don't have to go there with the idea to make singular long-term friends. It's just to be able to go out and socialize, not alone, particularly if you're going to a bar. Like, a lot of single women don't want to hang out at a bar listen to live music or something. So to have a group that you can go with.
even single men, they don't want to be seen standing around. So, where we go as a group, 3, 5, 7, even 30 people, it's just so amazing, so empowering. You can get up and dance. You're with, your kind of colleagues, new friends. And the other good thing is the conversation tends to be lighter because everyone's got stuff going on, and you want to kind of get away from that and have an enjoyable evening and make conversation. But if you want to turn them into friendships, you then need to have several interactions over a couple of months. Invite them for a coffee, invite them to something else. A lot of men typically will just keep going to the event or the group activity, but not take it offline, so to speak.
Yeah.
Why, they're a bit fearful, do you think? No
Well,
confidence?
Or
It's
just
interesting.
lazy. Men are a bit lazy.
No, they're not.
The
Men in my life are not lazy.
Well, the
Maybe a
research
bit
says that
fearful.
typically women, we can sit down in eye to eye, have a coffee and talk to each other. And if one of us cries, that's fine. Whereas
Yes.
men, they don't tend to do that. They walk side by side, down the golf
They
course.
talk about sport. Yeah.
Yeah. And they often don't. There's a lot of new men's groups opening up, which is what are really, really exciting, where they are looking to talk about things more meaningful. I remember watching I got, as well as first aid, a mental health first aid course. And, a lot of men are like, oh, how are you going? I'm struggling a bit. Oh, are you? Did you see the footy on the weekend?
Yes.
Exactly.
They're now learning to take those next questions. So one of the meetups I've set up and haven't really done much with yet is I call Beyond Banter and Beer. So to have, catch ups there's a number of craft breweries up here. And so, I'm not sure where all that's going, but it's just so interesting getting connected with some of the existing men's groups, because it's so important that they have safe spaces to talk about their stuff, mostly while doing an activity. So you've got to go where they go.
Yes, for
Around
their
the
mental
barbecue.
health. Yes.
And they like to
Yes.
go for a walk as well. So that's good.
Well, that's the new way of dating now. So I'm going to come on to talking to you about your dating experiences, and I believe that is the new way to date. Instead of meeting for a drink or a meal, people go for a walk together, which I think is really nice. But I recall that you were a little bit hesitant when you first started dating, and that is really, really scary, particularly as you get older. So what was your experience after marriage, diving
I
in
never
there
thought
again?
I'd find myself in this situation, obviously. And then one of my girlfriends were having breakfast and she said, you might want to think about starting dating, but then it's all changed since you last dated, which was last century, like everything else that's gone online. So that was a real learning curve, and she really gave me a lot of help in supporting me on, how to do apps and, how to be safe going on a date, let your girlfriend know where you are and what's happening.
Was she single as well?
Yeah. So, and then because I used that as the topic for my stand-up comedy, I did heaps of research and I'd research all these new terms and acronyms and, have my own stories and ask, dates, what their experiences were, my friends, and got so many funny stories. It was just so incredible. And one day I was looking out my balcony at the harbour and I saw all these yachts and gosh, I wish I had some friends that had boats. And then I decided I'd end my comedy set with, and I'm still looking for an FWB, a friend with a boat. FWB stands for Friends with Benefits, for those that so it was quite cathartic doing that. But certainly, going out for the first time, as you get older, you're not like, you don't have the body of a 20-year-old anymore. And so for many of us, we're quite self-conscious. But I found, building that new wardrobe and, people like you for who you are, and to, show off your assets, whether it's a short skirt or whatever, something that you feel confident and a little bit sassy in. And people, it's not like the men are all, bodybuilders or anything anyway. So it's appreciating that your body has carried you through life and done so many things for you. Many women have had children, I haven't, but certainly your body's done a lot for you and you should be proud of it.
Yeah. Have you found, as much as you've sort of healed whatever needed to be healed from your marriage, is there any part of you that's still taking some of those fears or insecurities into your dating world?
Yeah, well, I guess, a lot of people like, will they like me and all of that. And I know many women do, and I'd say, how was your date? I'm not sure if they like me. Well, I go into dating assuming they like me. I need to decide if I like them.
Yes.
So it's just kind of switching it around. And one of the challenges for me was because I'd done so much business networking, all my questions and conversation were more business related. And I had to really think, how do I start asking personal questions,
Yeah.
so that was another type of communication skill I had to kind of really work on. And I think now, even though I'm doing a lot of talking today, I generally find I'm a much better listener with all the techniques and different things that I've learned, because let's face it, I know my stuff, I don't know their stuff.
Yeah.
And so you're wanting to work out if that's a connection that you want to make.
Yeah, they say that's
or not.
sexy if you're a good listener, don't
Yeah.
they? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Stacey, where are you at now? Like, what has been the most surprising thing for you in this new chapter of your life? And what have your Sydney friends said about the changes they've noticed in you since you've moved to beautiful Noosa?
Oh, well, one of the things that I didn't know when I moved to Noosa is there are no yachts. They're in Martinvale. They're down in Mooloolaba. There's no fresh seafood like I used to go to the markets. They're in different,
What?
smaller locations.
That's a surprise.
There's little fish trucks and little shops, but it's not like the big Sydney fish markets. They're down at
Oh,
Mooloolaba. And the other thing I didn't realise is there's a man shortage up here.
really?
Okay.
Gosh.
So, there is actually 51% female and 49% male, according to the local data. But I think that women are out there socializing, but many men don't take that
A bit
step.
shy. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's something I'm working on in terms of community. And when I go back to my friends in Sydney, they just see such a change from the person who was so frenetic and doing a gazillion things. And I'm much better at saying no now. I mean, often I'd find over the years, that sounds really exciting, I want to do it and want to get involved. And then I get back home and I go, yeah, nah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Caught in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lovely thing that comes with age, isn't it? Which brings us on to aging. Can you tell me a bit more about your approach to aging and taking care of your health as you get older? I guess you've sort of covered that in your health and well-being, but specifically, the health issues that come with getting older, like keeping fit physically and your diet.
And psychologically, how the years are run. Like for me, I've got a big 70 coming up soon. I can't believe it. I need another 70 years to do everything on my long list.
Exactly. Well, one of the things I found is I wasn't great at keeping up to date with my own health when I was working, So like I did my healthy habits, and then I expanded that and I didn't know that was a thing. And then I expanded it to different aspects. So I make a list of things for mental health, for physical health, for exercise, and list all the things. And then I found out they're actually the sort of 7 or 8 categories for well-being. In relation to health, I made, because you go to your GP and they've got kind of records, but you really need to take control yourself. So I put together a document that lists my health goals, that has got all my practitioners, has got all my tests, blood tests or whatever, and dates of surgeries, and a spreadsheet of all my medications and vitamins and what they're for, because we forget, right? And what am I taking this for? And so, that way, when I go to see a new practitioner, or even as issues come up, I can reflect, oh yeah, I had that operation and now I'm having that pain. How is that related? So just really taking control of that. And what's also been challenging moving is to re-establish the right relationships. Some have carried over for a little while, but ultimately you need to create new relationships, whether it's your hairdresser, your GP, or, whatever allied health or specialist. So it takes a little bit of a time to navigate that as well. So again, keeping good records, keeping copies of documents in relation to tests and different things. And also, every 2 years, a breast exam or different things, making sure that you do those things, because they can easily drop off. So self-care is not just about, let's go have a massage or have a bath. It's actually about tending to all those things for yourself.
Yes, and being in control, like you say, with all your lists, so that you don't sort of leave the power over to everybody else, and then your decisions are out of your hands. And well, these days I've noticed doctors tend to say, "What do you think?" a lot.
Yep.
They put, and sometimes I think, I came to you to get an expert opinion. Stop asking
Oh, I
me
love
what I
that.
want.
But I think you're pretty
Oh.
attuned to your body, aren't you? I am.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
but sometimes you want them to make a decision. Like I know when I had cancer and I was in hospital and you're just out of surgery and you don't have the energy for anything except your recovery, and they're asking you to make decisions, and
Oh,
you
I
think,
didn't have that
no,
happen when I had
just
cancer.
take care of me. Just
One of
look
the things
after
that
me.
I found, having nursed my ex through cancer, was I worried who would take care of me if something happened. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
actually had, I think it was a carpal tunnel operation, and I had 3 girlfriends come pick me up. They looked after me, help you with your clothes, make meals, and I was way better looked after than my ex ever would have.
Oh,
So
that's so sweet.
Yeah.
Nothing like
Yeah.
friends.
yeah, so that was one of the surprising things as well, and also surprising how capable I was. And so you can pretty well Google everything, and I've even joined the women's shed up here. Got credited.
Oh, is there such a
Oh,
thing?
yes.
Yeah.
They were
We
talking about
spoke
that.
to someone from the men's shed, and he
Yeah.
said they were talking about setting up women's sheds now.
And
Oh,
it is
that's
Yeah.
actually
good.
to do, so you can learn to do things around the house, or even know when to get a tradie and watch them and know what they're doing. So
Oh,
that's really
that's
helpful.
good.
So pretty well I can do anything, or I can hire someone,
I
you
know
know?
you get a bit fearless, don't you? That makes it a bit hard to date as well, I think,
Yeah.
because you become so independent. I
Yeah.
like I can't imagine living with anyone again.
No, and I
I
can't
want a
either.
lovely committed
But you can
relationship,
still,
but not
yeah. That can still
24/7.
work. You can
Yeah,
on your
yeah.
honeymoon all the
That's a
time.
new way to
Yeah.
do it
And
now.
Yeah.
I think that's quite common now, because as
It
we've
is.
worked hard for our independence, created a lifestyle. I've got a lovely place that I'm renting with my dog and all my activities. So some people say, do you have time for a relationship? But I feel it would be lovely to have someone, as you say, a committed relationship that you have someone to talk to and share things about your life. And, you've got someone to go out with, you've got that intimacy, someone to have a holiday or whatever. But
Yeah.
I also would like a partner that actually has things going on in their life. They're not just coming in and being part of your life. They're adding value
Yes.
through their connections, their interests. You're learning things, you're doing different things. And, reflecting on long-term relationships. I mean, you think about it, when you met someone back in your 20s, you didn't know who you are,
Mm.
I know.
who they are, and who your future self's going to be.
You're right. My husband said we grew up together. I've been married 48 years and
Yes.
we've grown up together.
Yeah,
Some
so if you both keep
sometimes
growing and supporting each other grow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But I think when people say they drifted apart, I think that, when someone's had, say, like a life event like cancer, some people have that post-traumatic growth and other people kind of stall, And in my situation, having that uncertainty, I really put more into my career and more into my specialty and continued to grow. And so that growing apart really kind of resonates.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So we've talked a lot about, the fact that change only happens if you change.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's really struggling with getting older because they're so set in their ways
Scared to
Yeah.
change.
And
and scared to change? Yeah.
I think that, I find there are many people who keep reflecting on the past, but you think about, so much has changed, technology, everything going on in the world, the way we live, the faster pace, the access to so many different things. So they've been swept through the change, but they're still thinking back then. One of the interesting things I find, having done some international business and seen people migrate to different countries, is they leave that country and they're now here, but they still got what that country is still doing as part of their culture. Whereas that culture, if they were still there, has moved on.
Yeah.
And I found with many of my, friends who've been, lived in different places in the world, they then don't quite fit here, but they don't fit when they go back home because of those
The
differences.
time warp. That's sad. That's true.
Yeah. So I find with many of the older people around here that are now my friends. I'm not old. You know how we all go, oh, there's old people over there, but it's not me. It's not me. They don't know how to use Facebook. They're not sure about sending a text. They don't have a computer. And so, you know, when you've got people now, I mean, my girlfriend's been helping, you know, her parents into aged care. They don't have any of this, and it has to be all done for them. So I think, you know, not putting your head in the sand, going, you know, every day I'm learning a bit more about computers. Every day I'm getting better at this. And instead of saying I don't do it, just having those affirmations and having a little try, Googling how to do things, getting someone, rather than getting your grandchild to fix your phone or what have you, get them to show you how to do it so you can do it. And then it opens up to so many more new things. So I think it's really a case of kind of going, let's get off the couch, let's get out of our comfort zone, change where you are, whether that's, you know, going outside or going to a coffee shop or moving interstate, you know, change things, be surrounded by new things. You know, I think, you know, in work, you might go, oh, I've got 10 years experience, or I've got 1 year 10 times. So in life, in life, do you want to just keep having the same, you know, year after year? You know, I found living on my own in the city, I had so many incredible experiences and new people. And now in Noosa, again, the last 2 years, I've just done so many things, met people and had my eyes open to different things. And everyone has their own experiences. We all have our own unique lens. That's why we look at things or experience things differently, because it's all the stuff that's come before that shape your thinking. And so taking on new things, it's not completely changing your mindset, but it's sort of stacking on top and thinking, why do I think that way? How can I, what can I do differently? You know, what did I enjoy doing in the past? You know, oh, I like dancing. What's dancing like now? You know, I'm doing a bit of Latin dancing. It's fabulous.
And no one cares.
Yeah, me too.
I like to paint. There's painting courses. I used to like to, whatever it might be, or I want to try something new. My friend over there's just been to sip and paint and come back with this picture and drank wine. Let's give that a
go. And no one cares if you're not good at it. No one cares. Just have fun.
Like we said, if you don't know what to do, just do anything.
And they're probably just as scared as well. They just hide it.
That's right. And people think, oh, you know, if I go to the gym, people are going to be looking at me. And it's like, no, they don't care.
No.
Everyone's worried someone's looking at me, but I can assure you they're not.
Nobody's looking.
They're worried about them.
Yeah. I remember my mother years ago, we were at the local pool and she said, oh, you know, no, I don't want to get in a swimsuit, you know, and I think she was in her 50s already. And I said, trust me, Mum, no one's looking at you. Everyone's looking at the 18-year-olds.
No one cares, really.
No one cares.
So silly to worry about stuff.
You know, even whether I gave a presentation or my comedy, if I fumbled over something or missed a joke, no one knows.
No.
In fact, they've forgotten about what you talked about, you know, 5 minutes later, and half the time they were thinking about something else. So
yeah, absolutely.
Onwards.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, Stacey, we're not quite done with you yet. We've got a lovely finish coming, but I just want to say before we finish, that's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know it's going to inspire and help a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was actually the tools to do things like an ABC, which is what we wanted.
Yeah.
Really great fitting one. So perhaps to round off this wonderful interview today, perhaps you can sum it up, this wonderfully enriching journey that you've been on, and share your life lessons in a few points, if you don't mind.
Yeah, look, and I there's just so much, and as I say, it's all new. All of my career, I've done new things in your social life, but I think one of the things is to really be clear on your values. And, you know, with my background as a financial planner and, you know, setting goals and so on, I've now realized through these wellbeing courses that you need to spend your money in line with your values. If you want to go to dancing, if you want to do personal development, spend your money on that as opposed to stuff. So allocating your money and time to what's important to you in line with your values. I also think it's really important to invest in yourself. That was a difference that it made with my career. And now having, you know, paid professionals like psychologists and done courses and so on, it's added so much value to my life. I'm always surprised when people go, oh, I'm stressed, I'm going to go on a holiday. Well, you take yourself with you. You still have those things going on in your head. Asking for help. Happiness comes from helping others. You know yourself when you help someone with something, you feel good. And if you say, no, I'm fine, we all go, I'm fine. You're actually denying someone else to have that moment of happiness. And I think, doing activities you love, if you do that, it's not work, but also to identify some gaps where you can really add value. And that's, thinking about your skills. What do you enjoy? There's a gap, and you can kind of attract your tribe and really add some value. And as we talked about, getting out of your comfort zone, because if you actually do something that you find challenging, you do experience that growth, and then you feel empowered to go forward and do other things. I also think it's important to make your own decisions and not let them be made for you. So most of the major life events that happen to people, more than half of them they didn't choose. And yes, it's how you respond and deal with that. But sometimes if the writing's on the wall or there's some challenge, to actually weigh up the pros and cons and make your own decision before it's made for you, it's quite empowering. And I pretty well did that through COVID. I started cancelling things I was involved in before they were cancelled on me. So then I didn't feel that kind of loss the same. And your well-being, I think, your health and happiness is the most important, not being defined by your job. And I think your own version of spirituality, I grew up as a Catholic, but like many, I'm not a regular anymore. So it's about thinking, what is the source? What is universe? Meditation, what is it for you? I think going to church, you had that reflection time, but now we don't, we're so busy. And meditation, walking in nature, those things, that gives you time to reflect, so slow down your mind and, just really think about what's important. So yeah, I just encourage people to try new things. I'm so lucky being up here in Noosa. It's like the centre of wellbeing, and there are some amazing experiences to be had. And if I told my Sydney friends that I delivered a meditation at a portal, they'd go, what the? So, I go to so many things, and some of them don't fit, but it's better than staying at home on the couch, and others I've embraced. So just find what works for you.